Tuwapige makofi. Asante sana. Asante sana. DJ, asante sana. Musitoke, we were requested to do the Right Honorable Raila Odinga song. Just a bit of it and then we close. Tuwapige makofi tafadhali. Na tukiimba hapa kwetu watu wana dancing, sio eti unaona kuna shida. Mgeni wa heshima. Unajaribu kidogo, asante. Karibu. Shortly.
When Thank you very much.
You can find that song on YouTube.
Can we please give another round of applause? Thank you very much, Mr. Nyang'ono and your team for that wonderful presentation. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me now to invite Professor Michael Ntabo, the Deputy Vice Chancellor in charge of Academic and Students Affairs, to give his remarks. A round of applause, please. Thank you. Then now it's just flow.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Master of Ceremony. Mine is to appreciate this day, first and foremost, and to give glory to God. The VC, Rongo University, our chief guests, powerful men that we normally see more on social media globally, today they are with us. The faculty members, deans, directors, and our other staff. Good morning. Yeah, today it reminds me of a day when Professor PLO Lumumba, in some place called Sirikwa Eldoret, said something that I'll never forget because it connects me well with my background. There is a philosopher, and I happen to have done philosophy, called Socrates. And Socrates ever existed in this planet before Jesus was born. But there is one thing he did that it has never been contradicted. He used to give something similar to what the powerful two scholars are going to do today. And in Athens, it was being given in a name called agora, open space. And you know, in that open space, the open space means open ideas, means democracy. So the original public lectures started with the philosophers, and the philosopher Socrates. And what was the idea that he brought on board that today dictates the success or the evils of the globe? The aspect of morality. He says, an educated person is a holistic person who uses his intellectual ability, which is limited by virtue of him being limited, to push the ideas which must be full of moral status to improve society. So I'm very happy to have the two powerful men. Barrack Muluka also came to Moi, tough guy, and he left us with a lot of questions, typical of him. Questions to answer to improve oneself. So I'm very happy that we are all here, bringing these two powerful men is not an easy thing. So we thank you, Barrack Muluka and PLO Lumumba. And I think mine is to appreciate all the participants. This is a day unlike no other day. And I think today we must think beyond our normal thinking and ask why this open forum, where we are going to get very important ideas which borders academic, professional, and societal, and towards social transformation. And the hallmark of it is, what role does morality play to all of us? I think that moral part, that moral fabric, is a big thing in Africa and globally. Once we get it right, then everything will flow smoothly. So most welcome and feel at home. You belong here. I know you are seasoned scholars, you teach, you have been teaching, and we are happy to have you and honored to have you in Rongo University so that we can be able to assimilate your wisdom in all aspects. You know, remember when he speaks, you see love flowing, you see many things. Barrack, when he speaks, you wonder whether some of us went to school properly, but we are together. So without saying much, I want to invite my colleague, Professor Tarus, to say one or two things. Thank you so much, and feel at home.
Our two chief guests, Professor PLO Lumumba and Dr. Barrack Muluka, our Vice Chancellor, members of management, faculty members here, deans, we have directors, we have our professors and the administrative staff, our students, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Yeah, it's a great honor to stand before the two gentlemen, the two intellectuals that we have in this country. And we want to appreciate making time to be with us today. We understand how difficult and how committed you are. But as Rongo University, we really want to appreciate. I know we rescheduled this public lecture. We were to have it sometime in November, and October, I think, it was October, and we rescheduled it, and you found time today to be here. We are extremely, extremely, extremely happy and grateful that today you are bringing the discourse on matters generational change and social transformation in Global South to Rongo University. Professor Ntabo has said, we have always seen you on TV. I think I keep following Dr. Barrack's engagement, even including last night. And we keep following you, keep hearing your voices. Today you are here to share with us your views on generational change. We are here, and please make sure you put questions down. We are interacting with them today face to face. We want to say thank you very much. My work is cut because time is of essence. I'm going to read the citations of Dr. Barrack Muluka. He has a very long history. Dr. Barrack Muluka is an independent scholar, writer, and communication strategist whose work spans more than 3 decades across Africa's media, publishing, and governance spaces. He is known for his thoughtful engagement with how information, dialogue, and leadership shapes societies. His career reflects a consistent belief that communication is not only about sharing facts, but about building understanding and trust among people. Dr. Muluka holds a Doctor of Philosophy in Politics and International Relations from the University of Leicester in the United Kingdom, where his research focused on conflict and migration in Africa. He also earned a Master of Arts degree in Armed Conflict and Peace Studies, and a Bachelor of Arts in Linguistics and English Language from University of Nairobi. He has additional training in radio production, finance, and French language. Beginning his career in broadcasting at the Voice of Kenya, Dr. Muluka later joined Heinemann Kenya, now East Africa Educational Publishers, where he rose to become the Managing Director and Chief Executive Officer. In that role, he helped nurture some of the region's most respected authors and editors while expanding opportunities for African scholarship and creative expression. He has since worked widely as a communications and publishing consultant, advising national and international institutions, and strategic messaging, governance, and peace building. His experience includes service as special advisor to the Cabinet Secretary in Kenya's Ministry of Information, Communications, and the Digital Economy, strategic communications advisor to the Council of Governors, and consultant for the United Nations Development Program and the Institute for Security Studies. He has also contributed to leadership and civic education programs under the Kenya Institute of Management. As a writer and commentator, Dr. Muluka has produced over 1,500 essays and opinion pieces published in The Standard, The Daily Nation, The East African, the BBC Focus on Africa, among others. He has provided media commentary for Citizen TV, KTN News, NTV, BBC, and many others, where his calm, analytical voice is valued for clarity and balance. His books include Homes of Exile, Forced Migration, and South Sudan's Refugees in Kakuma Refugee Camp, published by Codesria in 2022. Musalia Mudavadi, Soaring Above the Storms of Passion, published in 2019. Betty Kigonyo, The Girl Who Dared to Dream, published in 2013. And Simeon Nyachae, Walking Through the Corridors of Service, published in 2010. His writing often blends research and narrative, building human perspective to political and social issues. Beyond publishing and media, Dr. Muluka has served on the Governing Council of the University of Nairobi, chaired the Kenya Publishers Association, and participated in numerous professional bodies, including the African Publishers Network and the Kenya Institute of Management. He has presented papers and lectures across Africa, Europe, and the United States, focusing on leadership, communication, ethics, and development. A mentor to many young professionals, Dr. Muluka continues to write, train, and consult on communication for governance and peace. He believes that societies rise or fall on how truthfully they talk to themselves, and remains dedicated to ensuring those conversations are honest, inclusive, and forward-looking. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Barrack Muluka to Rongo University. A round of applause. And now, not yet. And now I want to invite the Vice Chancellor to come make his remarks and also read the citations of Professor PLO Lumumba, and then we will proceed from there. Professor Samuel Gudu, welcome.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is my single honor and pleasure to interact with yourselves, and more so with Professor PLO Lumumba and Barrack Muluka. I welcome the two academics to Rongo University to come and share the knowledge they have. And I just want to say that I have listened to them many times. And it took us quite some time to convince them, because of their busy schedule, to get opportunity to come and they share with you as well. I want to say that my classmate and a friend for a long, long time, Dr. Barrack Muluka, was my classmate at Cardinal Otunga. We did A-level together. We were in the debating society. And I was reminding him, when we trounced the whole Western Kenya debating society, when we did a fantastic presentation in Kisumu, and when we were with Barrack Muluka and the late Udindo Piata, there was no school that could stand that strong army. I was in there more or less participating, but actually we were at the shadow of Barrack Muluka and James Udindo Piata. I listened to PLO Lumumba and I admire him as a scholar. I listened to him twice, I think twice. I've listened to him many times, but twice I can't forget. The first one, I listened to PLO when I was in Moi University. I was Deputy Vice Chancellor. And my colleague, Professor Bob Wisitemi, said, we just have to listen to PLO, because he was, at that time, talking on issues that were touching squarely on the development of this country. He gave a moving speech that day that he got a standing ovation at Moi University. The second time I listened to PLO and I got surprised. I was in West Africa. We were in Ghana, and PLO gave a moving speech to very senior and high dignity individuals, and he received a standing ovation. We were at the University of Assisi in Ghana. And when I talked to him when we were in Ghana, and I said, PLO, I request you to find opportunity to also come and share with Rongo University. So as Rongo University, we are honored to have the two gentlemen, Barrack, who was my classmate and a friend for many years, and PLO, who is an academic like ourselves, feel at home at Rongo University. I just want to thank the Rongo University choir. Even when we sat down, we were somehow dancing. And I saw everybody's head nodding. And I thank you for that kind of welcome that you have given to two of our friends. To the Rongo University team that helped us organize this, I just want to thank you, our colleagues. You have done a fantastic job. And to those who have found opportunity to visit, to come to this day and listen to the public lecture, I want to thank you. It is our culture in Rongo University to invite powerful individuals to give public lecture, because we learn a lot from what they say. You remember the last public lecture was given by the former Chief Justice Mheshimiwa Maraga. And again, we were blessed with a lot of advice, and we were very, very appreciative. And today, we have these two gentlemen whom I know you have interacted with in many occasions. The second thing I want to do is to read the summarized citation for Professor Patrick Loch Otieno Lumumba, LLD, D, Lit, bracket HC, D, Doctor of Science, bracket, HC. Those are powerful, very, very powerful recognition. Professor Patrick Loch Otieno Lumumba is a distinguished Kenyan legal scholar, an advocate, and a public speaker whose career spans over 3 decades, shaping discourse on law, governance, and anti-corruption in Africa. Born in Kenya, he holds Doctor of Law from the University of Ghent in Belgium. He holds Master of Law and Bachelor of Law from University of Nairobi and Diploma in Law from the Kenya School of Law. He is an advocate of the High Court of Kenya and Tanganyika, a certified public secretary, commissioner for oaths, and notary public. From 2010 to 2011, Professor PLO Lumumba served as the director and chief executive of the Kenya Anti-Corruption Commission, where he championed institutional reforms to combat systemic corruption. His tenure as the director of Kenya School of Law between 2014 and 2018, and founding dean of Barrack University School of Law in 2010, strengthened the legal education in Kenya. He also contributed to Kenya's constitutional journey as Commission Secretary for the Constitution of Kenya Review Commission between 2001 to 2005, helping lay the groundwork for the Constitution of Kenya 2010. A sought-after consultant, Professor Lumumba has advised organizations like European Union, UNDP, and the International Committee of the Red Cross on issues ranging from tourism law to humanitarian law across Burundi, Ethiopia, South Sudan, and beyond. According to, I do quotation from, again, Professor Lumumba, our country must morally rearm. Our country must morally rearm. We cannot run a country where virtue is vice and vice is virtue. We cannot live in a country where the looters of yesterday, where the looters of yesteryears assume they have undergone a Pauline conversion because they are in opposition and oppose the government of the day. Some of our richest men and women are to be found in politics, and their creed is, thou shalt reap what thou hast not sown. Professor PLO Lumumba, public law lecturer on ethics and leadership at Nairobi, 2013. Ladies and gentlemen, may we give Professor Lumumba a standing ovation. Standing ovation. We are giving this standing ovation to Professor Lumumba and Barrack Muluka. A round of applause. Thank you so much, and God bless you. Please sit down. Okay. I have been honored to invite my friend for a long time and a classmate whom we played with football. Those days, he was much stronger than me, but nowadays, I think we are almost equal in strength. Karibu sana, Dr. Barrack Muluka Okwaro. Karibu.
Thank you, my brother Samuel. The Vice Chancellor, Rongo University, the Deputy Vice Chancellors, members of the faculty, my good friend and brother, Professor PLO Lumumba, the student community, guests, ladies and gentlemen. It is my very humble pleasure to stand before you this morning to share with you a few reflections on democracy, the new generations, the changes of the times that we are going through, and of course, a hope for tomorrow. When we talk about hope for tomorrow, we must remind ourselves about the place of God, not just the place of humankind. God is good, and all the time? Yes, God is good, and that is his nature. Samuel Odundo Gudu, we grew up with him. Actually, when we met for the first time, we were much younger, I think, than the youngest person in this room, unless there's a mother who has come with a suckling baby. We were far younger than that at Cardinal Tunga High School, Mosocho, and we flattered ourselves with the belief that we were as sharp as the razor blade. That's why when we went to Kisumu in 1978, we did what we did. Professor Lumumba is my brother. He's actually my mother's son. She asks me all the time, how is your brother PLO? And if he goes home when I'm not there, my mother will receive him the same way she receives me. We grew up together in the eastlands of Nairobi, Fafajeriko, Lumumba, which he was named for Patrice Emery Lumumba, in Jerusalem, Makadara, and in the rookeries of Eastlands, where we learned a lot of things that we keep sharing with the people wherever we are privileged to meet them. We also went to the University of Nairobi at the same time as we went with Professor Samuel Odundo Gudu. And we were amazing youth. I know the thing about youthfulness is that you do not realize when it is slipping away. I did read Chinua Achebe's essay on hopes and impediments, and he did publish a book by that title, which I was among the team of editors that were privileged to produce, Hopes and Impediments. In one of the essays in Hopes and Impediments, Chinua Achebe talks of a university professor that he met in the United States of America as he was walking out, and this professor was walking in, much the same way you walk out through that gate and the other academic walks in. And this white academic looks at Chinua Achebe, and he remarks, they are coming young nowadays, aren't they? They are coming young. And as I've sat there, Samuel, I have looked at your students, and I thought to myself, they are coming young, aren't they? Only that I have had to remind myself that actually they are not coming young. It means we are going old. It's been a good 49 years today since I first met Samuel Odundo Gudu in Cardinal Tunga High School, Mosocho, where, as I have said, we were very sharp, the razor blade. We were so sharp that the following 2 years, all of us went to the university. Nowadays, we come here and we say we are going to Rongo University. We do not say we are going to the university because now there are many you have going to. In our times, we said, I'm going to the university, because it was the only place to be, and we were there. And quite often in those days and times, we were in the habit of happening in the streets of Nairobi to remind the world that we were around, but also to correct some of the vices in society, and particularly the vices in government and in governance, because we believed as young people that we were contributing to the evolution of a democratic tradition in Kenya and in Africa and in the world. Today, the new generations happen in social media. They happen on the World Wide Web of computers. They happen on TikTok, and a few of them on Facebook. I think they have left that one for my generation and the older ones. They happen on Instagram, and they happen in such other spaces. They are making their own contribution. They do not run the risk that we ran with Odundo and Lumumba in those years of running into Patrick Shaw, who would come fully armed with his G3 and other guns, and occasionally he actually fired at us. Because contrary to what the new generations believe, we were actually very active as young people. In fact, in the year 1982, we briefly took over power, the power of state, or so we thought, until we found ourselves in the village reporting to the chiefs. Then we understood the meaning of taking over for a few hours. Because if we took over for a few hours, the university would remain closed for 14 months. And we lost time. PLO was reminding me about people who lost their scholarships because their sponsors were asking, why aren't you finishing your course? You are supposed to be the best students. That's why we gave you these scholarships. But you are not finished. They could not say it's because the university was closed for 14 months. But within those spaces, we learned quite a bit, a lot of which I have put in a paper, which I will leave behind for the university to interact with and do with whatever it is it does with papers that have been presented on occasions like this one. But I want to speak from my heart, and therefore I will speak ad libitum for the next few moments before Professor PLO Lumumba comes to take over from me. We believed, as I still believe now, that the young people have a right to participate in the civic life of their society, of their community. We believed in that because liberal science and liberal democracy particularly exposes us to the rights of human beings, to the place of government, and to the place of democracy. We have been told here this morning about Socrates, or Socrates. I'm not usually very sure whether he should be called Socrates or Socrates. I first learned about this gentleman when I was in primary school, and my primary school teacher used to call him Socrates. When I went to higher echelons of learning, they called him Socrates. This Socrates or Socrates did not believe in democracy. That is the biggest contradiction that this great philosopher, this great thinker, this man with whom we associate philosophy and with whom we have often associated democracy, did not believe in democracy. And when you have interacted with Plato's The Republic, you will see the Socratic method of seeking the truth, which is the method that is used even in institutions such as this one, as institutions of higher learning. You keep on asking the question of why and the question of how. And he would say, for example, that if I was sick and I wanted to be treated to recover, would I seek the opinion of the majority, or would I seek the opinion of the solitary individual who knows how to deal with sicknesses? And his answer was that I would deal with the person who may be isolated, who may be an individual, but who understands how to deal with diseases. And that is our dilemma in the world today as we deal with this animal called democracy. Democracy, as we understand it today, pertains to universal suffrage. Universal suffrage pertains to the right of each individual to exercise and to administer one vote on any given issue, with each vote having the same weight as any other vote. And there are people who have argued that that kind of system is wrong, that kind of system does not work, because we know also that there are those who vote because they don't know why they vote. They ask, how shall we vote? And today you have them in the county assembly, you have them in the National Assembly, you have them in the Senate. People who ask, tupige aje hii kura? Hii kura tupige namna gani? Never mind that they have taken an oath of office, that when you go to parliament, when you go to the county assembly, the first task is to take the oath of office. And as you take the oath of office, you hold the sacred book up and you swear to act conscientiously. And that word gives them trouble. And after they have stumbled through the tongue twisting, that is conscience, that is the promissory note of performing conscientiously, they forget about conscience. They now go into spaces where they have to ask, umetembea namna gani? You want us to vote like this, what have you brought? I've had the privilege, as was read here, to advise people in high places, and occasionally they would be summoned before the House of Parliament, and the chairs of those various committees would come to the ministry in advance to ask, how are you prepared? So that's the kind of democracy we have had. Yet liberal democracy teaches us that even in its defective context, and I aver that democracy is defective, but I go on to say with Winston Churchill that while it's defective, we still haven't found a better system than democracy. And therefore, when we reflect about this being called democracy, the most critical thing that comes to our mind, such as mine, is the consent of the governed. The consent of the people who are governed. John Locke, leading liberal philosopher in the 18th century, 1789-90, he wrote his famous 2 treatises of government. And the thrust of the 2 treatises of government, 1789-1790, is about the consent of the governed and the legitimacy of government. That without the consent of the governed, any government in power is illegitimate. That those you govern have not accepted to be governed by you. And so when you stage a military takeover, you do not have the consent of the governed. When you steal an election, you do not have the consent of the governed. You are in office illegitimately. And that those who find themselves in office illegitimately must be removed. It's not me saying that. It's liberal democracy, John Locke, who is cited up to now, whom Thomas Jefferson refers to in the preamble to the American Declaration of Independence, that we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men, and I dare add, all men and women are created equal, and they are endowed by their Creator with certain basic fundamental rights and freedoms, that among these is the right to life, the right to liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That for these reasons, governments are constituted among men and women to protect these rights. That any government which does not protect these rights must be removed, and the people must replace it with another government that is going to protect those rights and freedoms. You find that everywhere. Thomas Aquinas, a philosopher and a theologist, recognizes the same, but goes on to say that the damage that is done if removing a government that has not protected those rights and freedoms should not do more harm than the harm that was being done by that government. So we find ourselves in a dilemma, therefore, that to what extent and with what instruments of measurement are we assessing the damage that has been done and the damage that is being done? And we are told, however, that life is sacrosanct. When you have destroyed life, then you have destroyed the most important property that anyone could have. Because without the property called life, the individual cannot have any other property. The individual cannot enjoy liberty. The individual cannot have physical property as estates. The individual cannot pursue happiness because that individual is no longer there. Now, these are the things that our young people must reflect about, that we reflected about in our own time, that we continue agonizing about, some of us, as we get older, that we must leave to new generations as our legacy to them, that they must continue to reflect about that Professor PLO Lumumba and Professor Samuel Odundo Gudu will want to remember that in our day and time, we were never available for hire as goons. Today's generations, and for the uninformed, means without being questioned. I have a right to speak ex cathedra on this matter because I was never hired. Today, the young people are available for hire, but they're not just available for hire, they also advertise themselves to those who will hire them to do a goon assignment. That is a very pejorative role to play in an entity that calls itself a democracy. It doesn't matter whether the hiring authority is in government or the hiring authority is in the opposition, whether it is a broad-based government or whether it is not a broad-based government, whether it is a scattered opposition or whether it is a united opposition, we as scholars arm ourselves and flatter ourselves that we are special kinds of individuals, that there are certain things that we frown upon, that in fact we frown upon certain woolly materialism, that we are more mesmerized with the ideas in the individual's intellect and the dignified comportment of the individual rather than the earthly trappings that the individual assembles around himself or herself. I was being reminded not so long ago about fellows out there who come and they have a lot of money, they have assembled cars and houses, and when they have assembled those, men also assemble women. Is the minister for this, minister for that, director of something, owner of this car, owner of that car, husband of his wives, and all that, and you don't know where to stop. I was saying that if I wanted to accumulate money and to become owner of this, owner of that, husband of my wives, I just need to burn charcoal. I've seen you have a lot of trees here. I would burn charcoal and export it to the Arab world and I would become very rich. But I flatter myself with the belief that I'm cut out for greater things, that I will be remembered in the days to come, not because of the trappings that I heard, but because of the ideas that I contributed 300 years before the birth of Jesus Christ. Socrates was doing his thing, and Professor Taba remembers him here today and is being cited all over the world today because of what he stood for, because of the ideas that he propounded. Professor Socrates, because he was a professor, did not have anything except a loose cloth. And Professor Socrates, when he was dying, he was given the hemlock to drink, a certain kind of poison, and he started dying from his toes coming upward. And as he died, he was still philosophizing, asking questions and receiving answers. And today, because of that, he's cited all over the world. Is it possible that in our reflection about our contribution to better society, to democratized societies, that we would place certain values above woolly materialism? I have taken a quick look at your values as a university, and I'm immensely impressed. When we leave this university and we go out to work and serve, are we going to carry those values with us, or are we going to leave them behind? I've come across people who say, oh, thank God, I have cleared. Now it's time for me to forget all those things that they taught me. I have done my last paper, and I believe I have passed. Now I just want to forget I'm going to get my degree. Or people who do something called Mwakenya. Mwakenya. Unajua Mwakenya? Mwakenya. People who do Mwakenya and they feel nice. When you wear that cap and you know you did Mwakenya, don't you even feel like you are a fraudster? Do you walk around and say that I went to Rongo University? When we try to engage you in your discipline, you start changing the subject. As we try to talk to you about botany and zoology, where you have excelled and you have got a PhD, you start evading that conversation to talk about different things. So we have got to reflect about that honesty. Finally, I want to just very briefly examine the state of the art, because we were talking about the Global South. And the Global South, as we are aware, is a group of countries in Africa, Latin America, and Asia that define themselves generally around poverty. They are poor. But the biggest poverty they suffer is the poverty of leadership. Is the mentality of poverty. The poor man is not the person who does not have, the person who lacks. The poor person is the person who is always feeling that he does not have enough. So it doesn't matter how much he or she has, they will keep on craving for more. When they find yours, anataka kuchukua. Akule chake na ale chako pia. That is the poor person. And Africa, Asia, and Latin America has preponderated with those kinds of people. And the first thing they want to steal is government. They will steal government through elections. They don't have the general will of the people. They don't have the consent of the governed. And when you have stolen government, you are ready to steal everything else. Ile utapata mbele, utaiba. Kwa sababu wewe ni mwizi. This continent preponderates with that. In 1961, little Togo got independence. And in 1963, a certain Nasingbe Eyadema overthrew Silvanus Olympio, who had been elected the president of Togo. And that was the symbolic start of the challenges that Africa suffers from today. Silvanus Olympio had himself stolen an election, the independence election. Can you think of that? Stealing the election, independence election. Silvanus Olympio was elected by 100% of the voters in 1961. In 1963, Nasingbe Eyadema overthrew him and installed a certain Nicholas Gransky. 1963. In 1967, Nasingbe Eyadema said, we have warmed ourselves a little bit around this fireplace of Nicholas Gransky, and we have tested the pie a bit. And the fire is quite good, and the pie is very sweet. How sweeter would it be and the fire more comfortable if I took over the fire myself and the pie? And he did that in 1967. And he went on to rule over Togo for 38 years. And we have that mentality informing Africa, which is a mentality that the youth must reflect about, even as they are being armed, even as they are being told, kujeni Kakamega, musimamishe hii ujinga ya I am Sifuna. That we must reflect about. That we have individuals who are personalizing power. And we have individuals who are craving for that power. And they are saying, we want power. They are saying, we cannot do without power. And they are saying that this country is a cow, and that this cow, hiyo ng'ombe itakatwa katikati. Na Patrick Lumumba ataenda na nusu. Na Barrack Muluka ataenda na nusu. Where are the governed in this scenario? Where are they leaving you? When you say, sisi sasa tuko kwa serikali, wewe umeketi wapi katika hiyo serikali? Young man, young lady. Because what we are witnessing is something called post-ideological elite cartel power bargaining. That the parties, the giant parties which should be competing in the agora of ideas is making deals like business cartels. Wewe utachukua hii, mimi nitachukua hii, Kalonzo atachukua hii, Gachagua atachukua hii, Ruto atachukua hii, Oburu Oginga, youth leader, atachukua hii. We must reflect about that seriously. The consent of the governed. And that consent does not include the consent to be a hired goon. Thank you very much. You know, if you thought that was electrifying, you ain't seen nothing yet. It is my very humble pleasure and privilege to present before the assembly my younger brother. You know, when you are growing up in the home, when you look at those who are coming behind you, and when you see that they are better than you are, oh, how joyous it is. Ladies and gentlemen, let us put our hands together for the only Professor PLO Lumumba.
Thank you very much, my brother Barrack Muluka, Dr. Barrack Muluka. I will, as they say in West Africa, stand on the protocols already established. But it would be remiss if I did not acknowledge the Vice Chancellor, Professor Gudu, and the senior administrators and senior academics, and the students who are here present, and other friends of goodwill who are watching via technology. My good friend, Dr. Muluka, has already spoken to the subject. In Kiswahili, they would say, tayari amechokoza hoja, amechokoza hoja. The subject that we are asked to speak about this morning is one that is weighty. The words with which we are confronted are foreign. Whenever I have the opportunity, like I do this morning, to speak about the subject of democracy, I ask, what is the equivalent word of democracy in your mother tongue? And many times you discover that there is no equivalent. And that even in Kiswahili, we do what we call kutohoa. We say demokrasia. Tunakiswahilisha democracy. Which means that is a form of governance as defined and conceptualized by the former colonizers is different. But that does not mean that we did not know governance. We knew governance. We knew governance in different ways. Those forms of governance may not have been popularly elected, but in many places they were accepted or acceptable. If you talk to the Baganda of Uganda, even up till today, they believe that the Kabaka is their supreme ruler. If you talk to the Yoruba of Nigeria, they still believe that the Oni of Ife is their ruler. If you talk to the Asante, they still believe that the Asante Hen is their ruler. And that can be applied to many societies in Africa. But we must always remember that our governance systems were rudely interrupted. It started in earnest through what appeared like innocent engagements. And those of you who will have the opportunity of reading seasoned African researchers such as Senegal's Cheikh Anta Diop will be reminded that in the western part of Africa, we traded with the Portuguese and the Spaniards. That there was a system when there were governance systems. We remind ourselves of Sundiata Keita, the Epic of Mali, and the Mandian Charter of the year 1376, which was earlier than the French Revolution, which was earlier than the instruments of human rights that we today talk about. We are reminded of the pilgrimage of Mansa Musa to Mecca and how he changed the world economy with the gold that he carried to Mecca. In fact, today, commentators say that on the basis of all calculation, Mansa Musa remains the richest man who ever lived. That was in the continent of Africa. Then slavery changed everything. But there was resistance against foreign governance. You'll remember the Amazon women in what we now call Benin, which was known as Dahomey. You'll remember the rebellions, the great Queen Zinga of the Ndongo and Matamba of what is present-day Angola. You'll remember the Hehe rebellion, the Maji Maji rebellion, the rebellion of King Chaka of the Zulu, the Mau Mau uprisings. Africans resisted domination, but ultimately in 1884 and 1885 in Berlin, the continent was divided in the spheres that we now know amongst the European powers. and new governance systems were introduced. The Portuguese, the French, the Italians, the English, and in the Congo Free State, one person, King Leopold of the Belgians, controlled what is now the Democratic Republic of Congo, a land larger than the entire Western Europe as we know it, until, of course, he handed it over to the Belgians. We then started the struggle to regain our independence. And when we regained, some say gained our independence, what happened is that we were never the same again. The only country that was never colonized was what we now call Ethiopia. And on the 28th day of February, which is only a few days away, they'll be celebrating the 150th anniversary of the Battle of Adwa, when the Ethiopians defeated the Italians. Liberia was created for freed slaves. And we know that Monroe even named the city of Monrovia after himself. So we started regaining independence with Egypt in 1922. Later Sudan in 1956. And later Ghana on the 6th day of March 1957. The struggle in what you now call the Global South for governance and dignity is one that was pioneered by young people, some of them younger than yourselves. When today we talk about the Pan-African movement, very few of us remember that it was Trinidad and Tobago's Sylvester Williams who brought the idea of a Pan-African movement to bring governance that would restore dignity to the people or the peoples of Africa, both in the mother continent and in the diaspora. The very first meetings were held in the early parts of the 19th century, but ultimately the most iconic meeting that we remember is the 1945 meeting in Manchester, which was attended for the first time by Africans from the continent with Kwame Nkrumah, Kamuzu Hastings Banda of the then Nyasaland, Obafemi Awolowo of Nigeria, and of course, Kenya's Jomo Kenyatta. At that time, the idea was independence. But the idea of independence had already started. In 1906, on the 5th day of April 1906, at the University of Columbia, a young South African delivered a speech, which I commend to all of you, The Regeneration of Africa. Pixley Kaisaka Seme. He then was one of the founding fathers, together with John Dube and Gumede of the African National Congress in 1912 in South Africa. And that remains the ruling party in South Africa. He was reminding us that we must be in charge of our affairs. And why he is important is because he was young. They were in their 20s. Young Africans were active. And if you look at the entire struggle for independence in the continent of Africa, there were young people. All of them, or most of them, were in their 20s. Even those who later became what they became, bad individuals, spoke about the dignity of the continent of Africa. The word they used was self-governance. The African had been humiliated, had been dominated. We were restoring dignity. There was color. There was discrimination based on color and gender. And in those early days, even the ones who had not gone to school, what we would call properly, were as eloquent as they were convincing. Across the continent of Africa, and you students of history, I commend to you to look at them, listen to them. Leopold Sédar Senghor of Senegal, young, he became not only an intellectual, but the first president of Senegal. Amilcar Cabral of Guinea-Bissau and Cabo Verde, young, in his 20s. Read what he wrote. Ahmed Sékou Touré of Guinea barely went into high school, but was able to tell the French, I prefer to live in dignity in my poverty rather than to be undignified in riches controlled by the French. Ahmed Ben Bella of Algeria, young. Gamal Abdel Nasser of Egypt, young. Kwame Nkrumah, Julius Nyerere, the man for whom I am named, Patrice Emery Lumumba, Julius Kambarage, I've already said, Thomas Joseph Mboya here in Kenya, Haile Selassie, Kenneth David Kaunda, Hastings Kamuzu, down south, I've already talked about Pixley Kaisa Kaseme, Walter Sisulu, ladies such as Albertina Sisulu, and later Winnie Madikizela Mandela. You go to what is now Namibia, the older ones will remember Sam Nujoma, Andimba Haman Toivo Ya Toivo. Angola, those of you who are here in Kenya in the 1975 will remember when they came here for peacemaking. The great Agostino Neto, whose poems you must read, Holden Roberto, Jonas Malheiro Savimbi, Samora Moises Machel. You will remember all of them. These were young people, Robert Gabriel Mugabe, Joshua Nkomo, young Africans who believed that we could change the continent of Africa. But yet, one African American had seen it all. John Henry Clark said that when all African countries regained their independence, each one of them, without exception, inherited a form of governance which they inherited from their colonizers, and none of them will ever succeed on the basis of those systems. As I speak to you today, since Ghana regained her independence, there have been 200 attempted coup d'etats in Africa. 106 of them have led to change of government, which tells you that there is a crisis in governance, which calls into question this thing we call democracy. What is it? What animal is it? That we sing her praises, yet it threatens our nations. As I speak to you now, there is war in Sudan. courtesy of attempted democracy. Chad yesterday closed its boundaries with Sudan. It's the highest number of displaced persons in the world since the World War II. Sudan is in a crisis. As I speak to you now, in southern Cameroon, in Ambazonia, there was an election in which the president, who is a dotard at 92 years of age, having been told that he won the election, he says, "Which election did I win?" He does not even know that there was an election. Children have not gone to school in southern Cameroon for the last 3 years. As I speak to you now in the Democratic Republic of Congo, children have not gone to school. Women have been raped. That is the state of your continent, grappling with democracy bequeathed to us by the colonizers. My good friend, Dr. Barrack Muluka, told you that those who conceptualize democracy thought about the people's consent, and he told you about the Declaration of Independence in Philadelphia. We hold this truth to be self-evident, that all men are born equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And that it is for this reason that governments are instituted amongst men. Those are the iconic words of the American Declaration of Independence. Consent of the people. But why is it, therefore, if consent of the people is measured through the electoral process, why is it that when the purportedly elected government in Gabon was overthrown by Oligui, the people were celebrating in the streets if there was a consent? Why is it that when Doumbouya overthrew Alpha Condé in Guinea, there was celebration? Why is it that when Atimi Goita took the government by force of arms in Mali, there were celebrations? Why is it that when Achani took over the government in Niger, there were celebrations? Why is it that when Traoré took over the government in Burkina, there were celebrations? Why is it that even when the AU in the year 2014 said in Malabo, in the year 2014 said that unconstitutional change of government will not be tolerated, we are embracing and celebrating unconstitutional changes of government? What has happened to the thing that you call democracy? Why is it that in this very country that is ours since 1982, when we restored what we call democracy and multi-party election, after every election cycle since 1992, 1997, 2002, 2013, 2017, 2022, after every election, the country is threatened with disintegration along ethnic lines. Why? There must be a problem with this thing we call democracy. And it's not only in the continent of Africa, because we are talking about the global south. It appears to be a problem in Latin America. Whether you are talking about El Salvador, or you are talking about Nicaragua, or you are talking about Venezuela, there is a problem. Why is it? Why is it that the young people who constituted the positive changes of the 1960s are now being used differently? It is Nigeria's Wole Soyinka who says that it amazes him that in the continent of Africa, young people congregate and cheer the very people who steal from them. Today, we live in a country whose greatest claim to fame is that it is led by kleptocrats, thieves. We live in a country today whose greatest claim to fame, it is led by kakistocrats, our very worst. We live in a country where we are led by ethnocrats who appeal to the primordial ethnic sensibilities of the population. Today, in our country, there is dog whistling. Political leaders, I use the word leaders very loosely, are telling people that in the run-up to the elections in this country, they had better go to the Aboriginal homes or they'll see. And they saw in the year 2007 and 2008. Why? And young people are cheering them on. You know, many times when I occasionally watch local television, read local newspapers, and it is a Thursday, and I see the political players thumping their chests in Kenya, how popular they are, because their rally was bigger than the other one. I ask myself, don't they know that that is a statement of the state of unemployment in the country? That during a weekday, young people can come and assemble in the tens of thousands. You should be a sense of shame. But they celebrate. As my good friend said in Kiswahili, Kenya ni ngawira. Ngawira are war spoils. Kenya is divided. Some have the neck, some have the abdomen, some have the legs. And even the poorest who has not had a meal celebrates that one from their tribe is in cabinet, as if it ever mattered. That is the state of democracy in our country. And you young people, many of you are co-authors of this tragedy. Nyerere, whom I quote often, said in 1967 and later in 1995, siri ya maendeleo ni watu, ardhi, siasa safi, vijana wenye malezi bora, siha njema na bongo kali. That is the recipe for development, Mwalimu Julius Kambarage Nyerere said. And in our lifetime, courtesy of his love for his country, he succeeded in putting together 126 plus ethnic groups to think like one nation. Tanzanian will never ask you whether you are Msukuma or Mnyamwezi. They'll ask you wewe ni wa Chama cha Mapinduzi, wa Chadema, au wa CUF, au wa ACT Wazalendo. Kenya, Amulembe nation. Mulima, Mutaro, Oduadu. And Nyerere posed, how can we in the 21st century still be talking about tribe as the basis for decision making in the 21st century? In 1975, Samora Machel, he was just slightly over 30, said, in a multi-ethnic nation, for the new nation to thrive, the tribe must die and must only exist for cultural values, not for purposes of decision making. Today, in our country, When you go for an interview, they ask you to fill papers, and they ask what your tribe is. And you are being hired as a professor. They ask what your tribe is. You are being recruited as an ambassador in a foreign nation, and they ask what your tribe is. When you take a matatu from Rongo to Kisumu, do you ever ask the tribe of the driver? When you are flying to Europe and America, do you ever ask the tribe of the pilot? When you go to the hospital, do you ever ask the tribe of the doctor? You simply want a good doctor. Deng Xiaoping once said in 1980, it doesn't matter whether the cat is black or white as long as it catches the mice. In Kenya, we want to know the color of the rat or the cat. How can we grow? And the reason why the global south is suffering is because of that. You know, as a student of history, I sometimes listen to our politicians. It's an exercise in pain to listen to them. It is painful. It is painful because they say with their mouths what they do not believe in their hearts. When they have a podium like this and they are reading speeches that have been written for them, they sound good. But when they go to funerals in their rural homes and they are speaking in their mother tongue, it is sad and painful to listen to them. And I often look at our country like I look at most. And I look at Haiti. And during our own lifetime, there was a man called Jean-Claude Duvalier, or Francois Duvalier, Papa Doc. He was succeeded by his son, Baby Doc, Jean-Claude Duvalier. He was a medical doctor. When he came, he seized the power. He started dabbling in witchcraft. And after that, he formed a group of goons. Goonism did not start in Kenya. He called them the Tonton Makut. As I speak to you now, a contingent of the Kenyan police is in Haiti. 90% of the capital of Haiti, Port-au-Prince, is controlled by goons. The original sin was sown by the Duvaliers forming goons. In Kenya today, you can hire goons to be physically present at a rally so that your ideas are not projected. And if democracy was a competition of ideas, there is no competition. Today, you can also hire online goons called bloggers. So goonism has migrated from the political rally site onto the keyboard. They wake up with only one agenda: to deploy all the insults ever invented by man directed at their target. They create images of you in a state of nature and circulate them to the unsuspecting world. And as the saying goes, lies often take the lift, the truth takes stairs. That is the situation in which we find ourselves in this country. The youth must therefore ask the question, if the global south is to have a new system of governance, what must we do? This is the question that we are asking. This is the question that we are bringing to you who are the intelligentsia. because you are in a totally different space. You are being exposed to knowledge. What will you use that knowledge for? In the great Hindu epic, the Mahabharata, the greatest and longest poem ever written by man, 11 times longer than the Christian Bible, 3 times longer than Iliad and Odyssey by Homer, written 5,000 years before the Christian Bible. Sage Via says that education is that which changes you inside out. If education does not change you inside out, it is no more than the clothes that you wear in the morning and remove in the evening. You young people, how is education changing you inside out? What are the moral anchors? And I hope in this university there are no organizations such as Luo Students Association. I pray they are not. I hope that in this university there is no Kisi Student Association. I hope that there is no Kikuyu Student Association here. But I hope that there is an association of sociology students, an association of students of mass communication. That is what Africa needs, people who are organized around knowledge, not about primordial ethnic affinities. Because Africa and the global south will never grow until we are able to liberate ourselves from these primordial ethnic instincts. We talk about the global south, which includes China, which includes India, which includes Brazil, which includes Indonesia, which includes Argentina. The African continent is the youngest continent on earth today, 1.4 billion and counting. The average age, depending on whoever is doing the statistics, is between 18 and 20, the youngest. Over 75% of the African population is below the age of 35. And yet our GDP, gross domestic product, all of us, is no more than 3 trillion. It is smaller than the GDP of the Federal Republic of Germany, with a population of only 80 million and a GDP of anything between 5 and 6 trillion United States dollars. The Singapore that we want to go to, which we'll never go to, has only a population of 6.1 million. Is 773 square kilometers. We are 582,000 square kilometers, a population of about 55 million, a GDP, give or take, of 140 to 147 billion United States dollars. Singapore, 560 billion United States dollars. They respect the law. When you see them driving in the streets of Singapore, they respect street lights. Street lights are not there for decoration. When you spit or you chew gum and you drop it, you pay a fine in Singapore. Salaries are paid on time. When you steal, you are punished. In our country and most of the third world in Africa, when you steal, we give you a national honor and we appoint you into cabinet. How can we dare say we are going to Singapore when we are doing the wrong things? And it is you who must change. Some of you here belong to the Roman Catholic Church. And I want you to read an order that I have clicked attention on, the Benedictine order. When a priest is being ordained, they prostrate on the ground. And in Latin, they say conversatio morum. It is a complete change of heart. You become a new being. We must become new beings. We must say that we have sinned and fallen short of the glory of both God and man. We must exorcise the ghost of theft which resides in us. We must exorcise the ghost of negative ethnicity which resides in us. Koigi wa Mwere, whom Barrack Muluka has published in his book Toward Genocide in Kenya, The Curse of Negative Ethnicity, warns us that we have tempted God for too long. Our cup of iniquity is getting full. Nations don't collapse dramatically. They collapse when you least expect it. We must change. And how do we change? We change by doing things differently, by taking a solemn vow. You know, many times when I read the Christian Bible, and I read it often, I read certain verses, and I read them keenly. There is one that African politicians love, that all leadership comes from God. Nonsense. Nonsense on stilts. Some leaders are punishment from God. You have sinned so much by making the wrong decision that God sent as a punishment. And those of you who are Christians, I also want you, whenever you are reading that, because during this period, they are going to come with the tithes and offerings and look as holy as the angel Raphael, Michael, and Gabriel combined. Tell them there is also another verse in the book of the prophet Hosea, at chapter 8, verses 4. You can fact check me. Says, you have raised among yourselves leaders and kings whom I have not appointed. Let us change. You young people can change it. You can only change it if you take a solemn vow. You must be sacrificial about it. You must ask yourself, why do you elect people into office? Are they going to fight corruption? Or they are going to engage in primitive accumulation of things? You know, many people in Kenya say there is Roho Mtakatifu. No, the Roho in Kenya is Roho Mtakakitu. In fact, it's the Roho Mtakavitu. That is the spirit that is alive in Kenya, even in churches. Even in churches. And don't tell me that in churches it's not there. Go and read the book of Matthew, at chapter 24, verses 24. There shall come many Christs, and they shall work wonders. And if it were possible, they shall confuse even the very elect, if the days were not shortened. I'm submitting to you that these are those days. There are many Christs roaming around the world, calling themselves apostles, prophets, and many other things. Yet you and me know that in the Jewish tradition, the last prophet was Malachi. In the Christian tradition, the last prophet was John the Baptist. There are no more prophets, only disciples. So all these quacks you hear calling themselves prophets say, "You'll not be cheated, I'm a Christian of Berea." Who asks? So those of you who are Christians here, if you want to give it a spiritual dimension, in order to change the crisis of governance in the global south, read the Bible a lot more keenly. Those of you, and I'm sure there are Muslims here. Do we have Muslims in the assembly? Ramadan Kareem. And if there are Muslims, I want you to also read the Quran. And I want you to read leadership in the Quran. When the Prophet died, the person who should have been the first of the Rashidin to take over from him was Ali. Ali allowed Omar to take over. When Omar died, once again he was told, fight for this thing. He said, no, for the sake of the Muslim Ummah, I'll allow Abu Bakr. When Abu Bakr died, he was said, take it again. He said, for the sake of the Muslim Ummah, I'll allow Uthman to take over. He became the fourth caliph. And after him, the Swahili word fitina comes from the Arabic word fitna. And if you read Islamic history, you'll read about the wars of the fitnas. And that is how you now have the Sunni, the Shia. And the Prophet himself is on record as saying that before the return of Isa bin Maryam, who is Jesus Christ, there shall be 73 sects of Islam, of which only one will be the true one. Even if you are a Muslim, leadership is about consent, is about the people. What are we doing in agriculture? The leaders that come here and tell you whether it is 1 term or 2 term, that cannot be a basis for governance. It is what they want to do in agriculture. You have agriculture here. Your teachers of agriculture will tell you, we consume as Kenyans 9 billion eggs every year. 9 billion. We only produce 5 billion. Are the leaders telling you how we are going to produce the next 4 billion? Or they see it as an opportunity to import things that look like eggs from China? We live next to the lake here and we are importing fish from China. And you go to Kisumu and they tell you, Nyar China met kochiel. The daughter of China is nice when it is fried. How can we possibly be importing fish from China? We are destroying our lake through cage farming, which is uncontrolled. It is acceptable, but it must be controlled. Are they talking about that? This is the sugar belt. When was the last time that the sugar farmers were properly paid? Yet they are importing sugar with mercury from Brazil, and we are consuming poison on a daily basis. Rice, we are importing, and our arrow is dying. Are they telling you that? These are the questions that you young people. In fact, I wish that young people would tell the current political class, we are no longer interested in political rallies in open field. We want town hall meetings where we interrogate what you are telling us. That is the only time. Recently, I watched the elections in Japan. No political rallies. They were campaigning via television and social media. The number of registered voters in Japan is over 100 million, with over 500 electoral seats. Within 7 hours, the winner was known. Within 7 hours. In Kenya, people assemble at the bomas of Kenya from 34C or B or A. We are still waiting for Tharaka Nithi. 2 weeks down the line, people start declaring themselves winners. And when one is ultimately elected, you doubt whether he or she won at all. And our votes are no more than 22 million. We can't even count when it comes to voting. The time is now. Somebody sent me a message. I was away in Lusaka, Zambia on that day. And he sent me an image of the rallies that were taking on. One in Kakamega, one somewhere in Siaya, and another one in Nairobi. He thought I would be impressed. I said, I am not impressed. I am not impressed because I want to know the issues that were raised. Because what I see happening here is chest thumping. Bullies trying to demonstrate to each other who is the better bully. And I told him, if you never know and you have ever seen how a country produces refugees, this is how it begins. This is how it begins. This is how it began in Sudan. When a group of people are intolerant to ideas by the young people, it is the duty of young people to be revolutionaries in their youth, to question. And when they question, you do not fight them, you call them into an agora and privately and talk to them so that you are moved not by force but by the force of reason. Today, it is force, not force of reason. And let me tell you, history is consistent. And Fidel Castro once said it before he raided the government of Batista in Cuba. It is the duty of the young people to knock the door, because history has demonstrated that there is a crop of old people, not all of them, who once they have assumed and acquired the taste of power, removing them and separating them from the seat of power is like tearing the sun from the skies. In Kenya, there are such as those. Yesterday, as I draw to the conclusion, I was telling young people that the problem largely in the global south is that when you get into power, it is not for service, it's to be served. Have you ever seen that a person whom you knew as an ordinary, gentle individual, if he is elected as an MCA or a member of parliament or a cabinet minister, he begins to forget many basic things. One of them is to open the door of his or her car. They no longer know how to open. It must be opened for them. They no longer know how to carry their phones. No, they can't. It's too heavy. It is carried for them by individuals called PA. They no longer know how to carry their handbags if they are ladies. There is a man or a woman who walks behind them carrying that bag. They no longer can take water without being tasted because they think everybody tries to kill them. You treat them like gods. If one of them were to enter as I'm speaking, everybody would stand and he would be told, you are God's gift to us. The Lord has brought you. And if the front seats were full, you would see somebody moving close to one of the fellows and telling him, he has come, leave the seat. When you treat people in positions of service like demigods, sooner rather than later, they think they are demigods. We must stop it. I want you to read Chinua Achebe's The Trouble with Nigeria. And he gives an example of what happened at one time when he was in Ireland. They were waiting for the Prime Minister of Ireland. And he thought that it was like in Africa, where before the Prime Minister comes, first of all, he comes late to disrupt affairs. And nowadays what they do is they hire a helicopter so that as they are arriving, all the tents are flying in the air. Meanwhile, they have come 3 hours late. And before they arrive, they are wide-chested individuals who will come and looking menacingly from closed doors. And once they come, then you know they have come. In the Irish case, Chinua Achebe said, they sat everybody and a lone man walked in. And they said, the Prime Minister has arrived. We may now start. And he was dead on time. I look forward to those days. And those days can be brought back. My friend Barrack Maina and I have been accused by our enemies, known and unknown, that we live in a world called utopia, which is unreal. He will tell you at one time, when we thought that we had a contribution to make to this country, in the year 2006, we formed a political party. Historians don't remember that. Chama cha Uzalendo. We had many of our friends. We say, sisi ni wazalendo, patriots. You are talking issues. I visited him as he was campaigning in Huisero. We moved in Yala. And they were saying, Muluka tunataka pesa. They were not interested in ideas. I was in Kamukunji. I wrote a complete chapter with Sauti ya Kamukunji. The then representative of the World Bank, Bruce Willis, accompanied me and told the audience at a meeting that if you elect this man, we are going to convert this place where they are making sufurias into an industry. The head of the World Bank was with me. Somebody said, PLO anasema mambo ya industry. Sisi tunataka pesa sasa. The rest is history. Our votes were not enough. That is the crowd, and the person who was elected in my Kamukunji case did not campaign on a single date except the night before. And when I went to one of the polling stations, he had imported voters. That is the reality. Yet we wonder why our country is not growing. During that period, a friend of ours was contesting in Game constituency, and when he went there, they told him, we know what you want to tell us. We know already. Just give us the money. The electorate has become a bunch of mind readers. The only thing that moves them is money. They do not care how you acquire that money. So how do we change? Beyond lamentation, how do we change? We must change. And it is engagement such as this that will change. 30 years ago, as a young man, in 1994, I founded a foundation, the PLO Lumumba Foundation. Dr. Barrack serves as one of our trustees. Because we said we are not just complaining. And as I speak to you now, we are in 50 African countries. 50 African countries. And 3 countries outside of the continent of Africa. And our greatest claim to fame, we have never asked anybody, no European NGO to finance us. It is our little money that we use. So we are saying that you make a contribution. Beyond the rhetoric, you must do something. As I speak to you now, to demonstrate that it can be done through young people, one of our mentees, Usman Toure from the Gambia, has just arrived in Nairobi this morning. And what is he doing? And I want you to Google Sky Cosmetics. He's now perhaps one of the largest cosmetic companies in Africa, with outlets in the Gambia, in Senegal, in Lagos, Dubai, and he has come to Nairobi to set up one in Nairobi and in Kampala in Uganda. Doing things economically. As I speak to you now, we are also organizing our thoughts, because we don't just want to talk theory. 2 years ago, we started the first Pan-African Institute to talk about leadership at Lukenya University. My good friend Julius Selo Malema was with us. And only in the month of November, we also opened another one in Hargeisa in Somaliland. And 2 weeks ago, we opened the third one in Lusaka, Zambia. We are saying that it can be done. So we are liberating you. Stop thinking tribe. The tribe is only necessary for cultural purposes. Be a good Omogusi. I want you to be a good Omogusi. Be a good Kipsigis. Be a good Suba. Be a good Arekoyo. Be a good Kuria. Be a good Luo. Celebrate and write in your language and celebrate your culture. But let that be the recipe that we put together. If you are Bukusu or Muiswa, that is the recipe that we put together to make Africa great again. It can be done. It is our diversity that is our strength. We must do it. So today, when you leave here, I want you to go out, reflect, and ask yourself, what contribution can I make to my country? But start with your village. Barrack Muluka here is now in the process of putting together what will be one of the leading personal libraries on African material. I've visited it in his home in Emmanuelia. That is the contribution you want to make. What are you doing? Between your birth certificate and your death certificate, what has happened here? Or you just were born and you died? These are the questions. And lastly, I want you to be men and women who remember these words. These were words spoken by John Fitzgerald Kennedy in 1960 or 61 on the occasion when he formed what we now know as the American Peace Corps movement, which some of you saw their teachers here in the 60s and the 70s. He said, a society that does not pay respect to its young men and women is a society adrift, a giant headed to the rocks. Let us not be such a society. And you young men, remember that the society is not a society that is only composed of young men and women. Youth is a stage. Barrack Muluka has sung a song, Ujana ni Moshi. You are youth today. In the next few years, you will not be youth. What will you be remembered for in your youthful days? Be courageous without being suicidal and reckless. I urge all of you today to begin doing what we did not do. Begin writing your personal journal on a daily basis. Live your life on the basis of a timetable, even if you don't keep it always. Have certain values that you cannot compromise. And because you claim to be Christians, I'm going to conclude with what is recorded in the book of Daniel. Daniel was in exile when he was age 17. The Israelites were in exile in Babylon. The king was Nebuchadnezzar. The Bible records that he took and selected some 3 young men, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And that these Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego had different names. He changed their names. And they did not object when he changed their names. Then he told them that I'm going to erect a God whom you shall worship, and anybody who does not worship this God shall be burnt in fire. Then it was reported to him that these young men were not worshiping the God. And the fire was lit 7 times over. And when he called the boys and told them what he was going to do, he said, "We shall not worship any God other than the Lord God. And we know that he shall save us." But this to me is the most important thing. But even if he does not, even if he does not, and they entered the fire, and the king saw 4 men, and of one he said, "He is like the gods." And this came out unscathed. The moral of my story is that people can call you any name. It doesn't change who you are. But when people want to take your principles, be prepared to die. Today, I'm asking you to be prepared to die for certain values, because it is when you are prepared to die that you begin to live. God bless you.
Great. Thank you. We may be seated. It's time to have a short interaction with our speakers. And we have about 30 minutes. I want to request us that if we give you an opportunity to raise a concern, ask a question, please make it short and let others also interact with the speakers. Yes, please. As our chief speaker takes a seat in front, I believe that we are here, Professor, we have the lecturers, we have students. I want to give much of the time to our students. I believe the students outside are also hearing me. I would request our public address system team to distribute the speakers microphones in the congregation. Yes, we have come with the regaining. We have regeneration. And we have an issue that we must be in charge as youth. And so I want 2 people from this row, 2 people from this row, 2 people from this row. Students, it's our time. 1 question only. Don't add, don't give us stories, because as many as we are, we should be able to interact. Somebody is at the back? Yes, you have a microphone, please talk. Could we have microphones? Ushers, ask the microphone this side. There's a microphone this side. Microphones. Somebody at this side. Yes, gentlemen, near me. Great.
Good evening. Good afternoon, sorry. Prof, we thank you for your contribution to the Pan-Africa. So I have a question for you. If you are 22 currently, 22 years of age in Kenya, then without dynasty or financial capital, what ethnical and strategic path will you take to disrupt the structure without becoming part of the corruption you critique. Then also, but he has left in his book of House of Exile, thank you. He has talked about exile, internal exile. What about if he was supposed to say, negotiating space with imperfect institution governance, negotiating space with imperfect institution? Because yes, we are citizens, we have the right to vote, but it means that we're not in exile in real life. What if he had said it's a negotiating space and imperfect institution? Then you talked about...
Excuse me, I said two, yeah. You are getting more, some people are getting...
Okay, then one thing just to finish. When you open this book, one of the things that you show is innovation. Through your Prof, PLO Foundation, and now we're starting for a law school. Maybe with some organization, you help us through that. Thank you.
Good. A lady this side. Okay, bring it inside. This side and the middle. Give this gentleman. Yes, take the mic. Make it short before go on.
Thank you for the opportunity. Prof, my question is this. What is the econometrics and analysis of politics, basically on the context of, that is in Kenya, and a democracy? We have the political business cycles, and opportunistic policies. These two entities have affected the country, both locally and internationally. So, through referencing the generational theory, how do we handle, what is the political or which indicator can we use to solve this issue of political, business, cycles, and opportunistic policies?
Great.
Thank you.
Can we give the mic to this gentleman with the necktie? Please help me.
It's good to say your name, please. And maybe school.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I am Wanjala Jora. I pursue accountancy in Rongo University. I only have one question to Professor Patrick Lumumba and Barrack Muluka. Will you please help us register our own party, the Gen Z's party?
Good. Can you bring the mic this side? I'm looking for the hand of a lady. There's a lady here. Please give the mics to them. Yes. There's one there and this one. Please start and then the other one down there. Yes.
Okay, thanks for the chance. My question to Professor Lumumba Head, Dr. Barrack, just to ask, according to you, from the Kenyan recent Gen Z protest, did you saw it as a democratic awakening or did you saw it as democratic instability? And again, is the state afraid of the Gen Z, or rather afraid of the youth or the young generation because of our awareness of the democratic instability, or is the state afraid of us because we are uncontrollable? Thank you.
Great. That lady.
My name is Okeo Rose. I am a political science and public administration student. I'm a finalist. My question goes directly to Professor PLO Lumumba, and I'm asking this question out of naivety. Now, democracies are known to be derailed, or rather destroyed, through military coups or coup d'etats. But another way to destroy democracies is through the erosion of institutions. Recently, Traore abolished political parties, and political parties are key institutions when it comes to democratization of a country. And at the same time, political parties or other institutions are guardrails of democracy. So why is Traore abolishing these institutions if he promised to restore democracy in this country? Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Prof.
Let us take that birch first. You know, sometimes, and as I grow older, perhaps not wiser, but a lot more inquisitive and a lot more skeptical, whenever somebody uses words, and I try to avoid using the word democracy many times, because as I asked at the very beginning, in your mother tongue, what is it? Or in Kiswahili, what is it? This idea of political parties, whose is it? Even Europe itself, when did the political party arise? Students of history will tell you when Europe was governed by constitutional and constitutional monarchs, absolute rulers. And there was a time when they killed all their monarchs from Sweden to Russia, ending with the 1917 killing of the Tsar of Russia. That is how you introduce the constitutional monarchs. It is with industrial revolution, when parties are now divided into classes in Europe, that you now begin to see the emergence of political parties as ideologically founded. Then you begin to hear that some parties are to the left, some are to the right, and some are to the center. If you ask in any of these Kenyan political parties, are you to the left or to the right or to the center? They'll tell you we are ODM, our base is in Luo Nyanza, we are Wiper, our base is in Ukambani, we are UDA, our base is in Kalenjin, we are the other one, CDCP, our base is where? In Murima. So our political parties are not ideologically founded. They are personality cults in certain cases. And when we were doing the Constitution, one of the things that we proposed in order to institutionalize political parties is to give them political parties fund. We thought that that would help them to create structures. And that has not happened. So the question that I want to ask you, are political parties a solution to the Kenyan or African problem? In the Democratic Republic of Congo, there are over 233 political parties. In Kenya, I believe there are over 60 now, and the ones waiting registration are possibly in their 30s. That is the first question that I want you to ask. I'm just giving you this so that you may think. In the 1960s and 70s, we thought that because of multiple ethnicities, we should have single parties. That is why we had KANU in Kenya, saying it was a single party. We had TANU and Afro-Shirazi in Tanzania, which became Chama cha Mapinduzi. We had MPLA in Angola. We had Frelimo in Mozambique. We had UNIP in Zambia. We had Mouvement Populaire in the Democratic Republic of Congo called Zaire. Then we discovered that all these single parties also became dictatorial. Then after Berlin in 1989, Western countries told us that democracy equals to one, political parties, multi-party state, equals to 2, term limits, equals to 2, allowing NGOs and the civil society to thrive, equals to 2, economic rights and political rights, and we swallowed it line, hook, and sinker. Are we the better because of political parties? I want you to look at Kenya. Since we reintroduced multi-party politics in the 1990s, tell me, Which political party or which presidential candidate has ever contested an election in the same political party in the succeeding election? None. Of all the major politicians, and I will not name some of them, but you know them, they have belonged to no less than 13 political formations in the last 20 years. 13 political formations. What is their fidelity to the party? The Chinese have only one political party called the Chinese Communist Party, and they call it democracy with a Chinese character. The Chinese political party is the largest political party in the world with 100 million members registered and paying every month. Not this membership which you claim by rally attendance. In Kenya alone, the Chinese political party has 50,000 members in Kenya. The question that I want to ask you, therefore, why is it, therefore, that when there are coup d'etats, people are beginning to celebrate like they celebrated in the 70s? Why is it that the administration in the Sahel region are becoming popular? Because people are disillusioned. And they think that political parties stand in their way. Do I have an answer? No. I think that we must search for a form of governance which will be acceptable to the majority. Whether it will be led by political parties, I do not know, but I don't think so. Not on the basis of the evidence that I have. And that brings me to the question about Gen Zs. Forming political parties does not solve everything. I told you we formed one, Chama cha Uzalendo. It is still alive. Did it solve it? Why? Of course, you can't judge a political party within a short circle. Perhaps it can take years. ANC in South Africa has been alive since 1912. The question is this the time that we must ask ourselves? And today, one of them, I'm searching. And many of our friends are searching. Are there things in our traditional governance systems which, if we used, can help us? When we were doing the Constitution, Professor Ali Maruzurui wrote a paper and gave a presentation like this. If African politics are ethnic prone, can we make constitutions that are ethnic proof? Can we? In Switzerland, the governance system, there are 3 nationalities in Switzerland. The French, the Italians, the Germans, and the Romans. And the country, those of you who have visited, is governed on that basis. They have a confederal system with the capital in Bern. If I ask you the president of Switzerland is, you do not know, because they have what they call the presidency, which is rotation. But we are so many. If you listen to Kenyans, even when they are in political parties, the same political party, the same, which you think that what binds them is ideology. But within that same political party, people are still talking tribe. Our son, our daughter. It appears that the jury is still out as to whether the political party is the avenue. And I want to hear what my good friend Barrack Muluka talks and says about this. The question of instability. Our nations, the post-independence African nation is still very young and unstable. The oldest post-independence country in sub-Saharan Africa, barring Egypt, which is 1922, and including Sudan, which is 70 years since she regained her independence in 1956, 70, Ghana 69. We are still grappling with many of these things. And they are both internal contradictions and external pressures. So we are unstable. We are navigating some of these things. It is our duty to be in a state of constant search. And I heard Dr. Muluka reminding you of the statement by Winston Churchill, where he said that democracy is not the best form of governance as he described it, but he has yet to find one that is better. He was talking about Western Europe and former colonies. Look at what is happening now in China. How are they governing themselves? He's a Chinese character. Look at Vietnam. Look at Laos. Look at Cambodia. Look at Thailand. Look at India. Look at Indonesia. It's not that they don't have problems. Is there something that we can do? I leave that answer with you. Coup d'etats. In 1963, Kwame Nkrumah was addressing an audience in Accra, Ghana, and he said that the military has no role in the political affairs of any nation. But should it become necessary for the military to intervene in the affairs of any nation because the political clash have squandered the mandate that they were given, the military should only get into that space for a short period for the purpose of restoring order and ensuring that power is restored to the people who have the people's mandate. That is how I understand the Sahel. The ballot had been abused in Guinea. The ballot had been abused in Niger. The ballot had been abused in Mali. The ballot had been abused in Burkina. And that is why I support those extraordinary changes of power as a medium measure to restore the country to normalcy. And you know that since that period, Traore has survived several assassination attempts and coup attempts, one as recent as Friday, last week. So it is not as easy as we think it is. And I don't want to answer all the questions in the knowledge that my good friend Barrack Muluka will say some. But I want to comment just on two things: involvement. In 1997, there was something called the IPPG. And I remember at that time we were only 25 with my friend Nicholas Otieno and the late Okio Kombaka. And we created a movement called Modern, Movement for Dialogue and Nonviolence. We were animated at that time by Martin Luther King Jr. and Mohandas Gandhi. We made our contribution. Ultimately, there was the IPPG, and we make the claim, even if it is not true, that we made a contribution. We were only 25. You must strive to make a contribution. In 2007, when the country was almost going to war, we also made a contribution. And if you read the book written by the late Raila Odinga, whom I did not agree with on many issues, but to his credit, he mentions that our group are the ones who recommended the process that actually ultimately brought in Kofi Annan. You must always make a contribution. Barrack Okwaro-Maina Muluka will now deal with my heresies.
You know, in universities such as this, there are people who are called graduate assistants. The others who are called tutorial fellows. And when they teach, the professor sits at the back. And after they are finished, the professor comes to correct their heresies. What he's saying, I'm not capable of doing. I'm not capable of correcting his heresies, if any. But I will offer a few very quick reflections. Number one, when is a takeover, an extra-constitutional takeover, legal, and when is it illegal? Do our constitutions provide for stealing of elections? We have had questions of a certain Jose Kamago. Does the Constitution say that when a certain Jose Kamago steals the election for you, then that is more legitimate than when Traore takes over? I think there are two extra illegalities. And I use extra illegalities rather than illegalities deliberately. Deliberately in the sense that sometimes the demarcation line is very difficult to draw. It's very difficult to draw because Traore, as a soldier, has taken a constitutional oath to protect the constitution of Burkina Faso. When the election in Burkina Faso is stolen, is there a duty to protect the constitution of Burkina Faso? Who will protect that constitution? If you go to the courts, and the courts have also been held or taken hostage. If you go to Parliament, and Parliament has been taken hostage. If you go to the IBC has been taken hostage. Who is going to protect the Constitution? I think that is a question that should be thrown back to you as academicians, as a problem for those who are looking for a topic to go and write on in your research projects. You pick up that who is going to protect the Constitution. Those who have sworn to protect the Constitution, they have said, nitalinda, nitatetea katiba. Then they are summoned to State House to be given orders on how to vote. And His Excellency the President says, ninataka kuona yule ambaye atapinga hiyo kura wakati inaingia kwa bunge. Who is going to protect the Constitution? That is a question that we must all agonize about. The Gen Zs are groping for space. In fact, somebody talked about negotiating for space. They are negotiating for space in a post-ideological dispensation. Let us get this thing about political parties right. Those things that we call political parties, those entities, are containers in which the political power elite organizes you. Mnapangwa kupitia kwa hivyo vyombo ambavyo vinaitwa vyama vya kisiasa. Na hata wewe kama si mwanachama wa hicho chama cha kisiasa, wanakupangia humo ndani kwamba hii ODM Oburu Oginga ni yetu kama Wajaluo. Na utasikia wale wanaozungumza kwa wingi sana kutetea wakisema tumo serikalini ni wao hao kutoka katika hiyo jamii. Alafu utapata wengine wanasema kwamba ODM Sifuna na Caleb Amisi cost pia itakuwa hapo. Why cost pia itakuwa hapo? Because it is a container for political elite power bargaining. And the rest of the people who troop behind this, whether you like it or not, this is the truth, that you are gunpowder. Wewe ni risasi. You are a bullet. Wewe ni risasi ambayo inaenda kutumika katika vita vya wenyewe. Na wakisha maliza kupigana hivyo vita, after the handshake is done, they forget about you. Because you are now like a spent cartridge. Risasi imeshatumika, imeshafanya kitu ambacho ilistahili kufanya, Sasa kuna mabaki ya risasi. And that's why nothing happens. You can come up with 50 million 10-point agendas. Nothing will happen about them. Kwa sababu your gunpowder, your cannon fodder, you have been expended, you've been used that way. Kwa hivyo tunaposema kwamba tunatetea vyama vya kisiasa, vyama vyenyewe kwa pakubwa havina maana, ijapokuwa kwa wale ambao wanaviongoza na wanavitumia kama vyombo vya kuwapanga. Rais William Ruto aliambia Waluya, mwambie Musalia Mudavadi awapange, na asipowapanga tutawapanga. Na walipangwa na wanaendelea kupangwa. Basi ukitoka hapo ukija kwenye exile, essentially one is talking about the contradictions between home and exile. That was an international refugee thesis that we were dealing with, but we can localize it because in a sense we are all exiles. I put it to you that a majority of us here are exiles, domestic exiles, not displaced persons, but exiles. When you leave home to go and look for nurture elsewhere, there is a sense in which all of us are exiles. You leave home in Emmanuel, you go to Nairobi to look for a job, or you go to Rongo to look for a job. There's, to a limited extent, a sense in which you are an exile. And even here in exile, in Rongo, you have a house where you live. If you don't leave that place to come here, to negotiate your space, to work, you perish. So you are still an exile, even in this space. And when we are in those spaces where we are exiles, do we need accommodation? Do we need toleration? Professor spoke of dog whistling. And this is a very serious concept which we need to reflect about. There's dog whistling. There's dog whistling that people are being told kwamba tunapokaribia uchaguzi ujitayarishe kwenda kwenu. Mtu fulani asiposhinda huu uchaguzi, kuna vile mtajua hamjui. That is called dog whistling. And that dog whistling is mostly done in tongues that the ones who should be receiving the message do not understand. When you read the Philip Waki report on the 2007-2008 post-election violence, majority of the people in this room were too young to understand what was happening, but we were there. We witnessed it. When people said, we will remove madoadoa. Madoadoa are those who come from other communities, the non-indigens. And there is dog whispering to the extent kwamba tutatoa madoadoa, tutatoa magugu, we will remove the weeds, tutatoa matete. Sasa unapofika hapo, in the Waki report, they talk of children who would go home and they would tell their neighbors, mnajua, mtakuja kufukuzwa hapa. Jana watu walikuwa kwetu wakisema kwamba mtakuja kufukuzwa. So the things that we are seeing today, that we are witnessing today, for a young person who was not there able to understand these things 22 years ago, because if you are 22, 23, 24, even 25, you cannot remember what happened in 2007. You cannot remember. It was 19 years ago. Next year, it's going to be 20 years. You cannot remember, and you don't wish to see it. My friend, you don't wish to see it. So Sahau haya mambo ya political parties. Fikiria mambo ya uongozi na maisha yako ya baadaye na jamhuri siku za baadaye, na tusahau haya mambo ya associating ourselves with things that do not add any value to us. I have seen that in Kenya today. You have got young people who say to each other things like jana tuliwafunga, and they are talking about foreign football clubs and teams that do not even know that you exist. Lakini unasema kwamba sisi ni Man U, sisi ni Arsenal, jana tuliwatinga. It is the same thing you are doing with these political parties. Asante.
Great. Can I have only one student? Wow. One student here and three. The back, there is a one behind that one. And there is a lady at the back. Stand. Great. So please help them. My colleagues, this is our meeting. Don't leave. Thank you.
Thank you. To all distinguished guests, my name is John Frederick Ayo, student passionate about leadership skills, public speaking, and communication skill. I have a question which is short as a miniskirt, but long enough to cover the essentials. The question is how our young leaders can transform the generation until maintain the integrity on the democratic space. Good. How can young leaders transform the generation and maintain the integrity in democratic space? Be blessed.
Great. Then down there, I'll say down, there's a lady down. Yes, talk.
My name is Nevian Bosibori Michira, a third-year student doing education. I had a question. If majority are youths in the African nations, why are we powerful in political powers, yet powerless in decision making? Is the democracy sidelining our decisions, or? Yes, thank you.
Yes, that gentleman with the hand raised. Then from there, I will come to our faculty. Go on.
Thank you. My name is James Lesalon, a student at the School of Education that year. My question goes direct to Professor PLO Lumumba. The moment you started your talk, you mentioned the common goal that bring African states together, and you mentioned a common goal of independence. Then, my question came that if that is the common agenda or a common goal that bring this African state together, the all African state got independent, but again we are still Africans. Why this togetherness still ruin African state? Because the election was just concluded, a few months concluded in Tanzania, and again few months in our neighbor country, Uganda. Why this idea of togetherness can make this African state to come up with a strategic goal and a strategic way to guide these nations to get to conduct a moral election. Because what happened in Tanzania is not a good. What happened in Uganda is not really good. Why this idea?
You have asked.
Again.
Thank you. Thank you, my brother. Could we have faculty, staff? Staff, please. Thank you.
This time is not on our side. The second question by Bosibori will be answered by Dr. Muluka. Let me start with the last one, Professor. As I said, the post-colonial African state is troubled, and there is evidence even as I speak. And I ask you to go to, how many years ago? Just a few years ago, 1963 to be exact. And I want you, and it is available online, the resolutions of the 32 heads of states and government assembled in Addis Ababa in May of 1963. At that time, there were two groups. The Casablanca group led by Kwame Nkrumah, which wanted unity immediately. And then there was the Monrovia group, which included, among others, Taubat, I think, Félix Houphouët-Boigny of La Côte d'Ivoire, and to a certain extent, Julius Nyerere, who said it should be incremental. And I want you to listen to the speech, which has now been produced, of Kwame Nkrumah on the 24th day of May. He said, "Let us leave this place in Addis Ababa with one government now. Let us live with one army now. Let us live with one foreign policy now. I'm even suggesting that we choose a capital city now. I'm recommending Leopoldville because it is central. It is now Kinshasa, but it may be changed." And then he went on to say, if we don't do that, we are each going to get used to our individual countries, and it will be more difficult. The argument was at that time that the boundaries should be changed. Nkrumah said, no, if we begin fighting about boundaries, there'll be no end to wars. And that is why a meeting was convened in 1964 in Cairo, Egypt, in which it was decided that we'll retain the boundaries that we inherited, because anyway, they would just be administrative. A third meeting was convened in 1965 in Accra, Ghana, at which people thought we would now announce one common African government. It never happened, and in 1966, Nkrumah was overthrown. In 1997, on 6th of March, 40 years, Ghana's independence, Nyerere apologized. He said Nkrumah was right, we were wrong. Africa cannot grow without unity. We then started forming the East African Community at that time. Those of you who are older will remember even examinations were common: East African Certificate of Education, East African Post and Telecommunication, East African Airways. Then they collapsed in 1997. As I speak to you now, with Kenya as the chair of East African Community and the Secretariat of the East African Community, workers at the EAC have not been paid for the last 3 months. To its credit, however, Kenya has made 100% contribution, Kenya and Tanzania. We are becoming weaker and weaker, and borders are hardening on a daily basis. In Accra, Ghana, on the 4th to the 6th, I was a part of a group. We have now launched a program called Borderless Africa, and we are looking for 10 million signatures. I actually invite you to go and look for Borderless Africa and sign our petition. We want that petition signed in the next 3 months. We are handing over the petition to all the heads of states and government in Africa. It is not going to be easy. So when we talk about unity and a common goal, we know what it is. But somehow we are not doing the right thing. We are still being divided. In the month of May this year in Nairobi, Kenya, France will be meeting former French colonies here in Kenya, in Nairobi. Our French president has invited Macron here. Why? We are being divided on a daily basis. In Addis Ababa, the week before last, on the 39th meeting, the Prime Minister of Italy was meeting Africans Africa and Italy. There is a new scramble for Africa. So it is your duty to rise up and to ensure that it does not happen. The last question I'm answering is transformation. Once again, we are prisoners of the way we are taught and think. Somebody asked a very simple question yesterday at a meeting, somebody from Zimbabwe. He said, ask in a group of young Africans at any institution to name for you foreign ministers of 5 African countries. They will not know. But they know Marco Rubio of the United States of America. You ask African students at any university to name the capital of the Democratic Republic of Sahrawi. They do not know. Ask them the capital of Madagascar. Many of them do not know. But I'm saying, as I conclude, that Africa is going to be turbulent if we don't contain this energy. And if we don't elect the right people into office. In Madagascar 16 years ago, Africans elected a DJ. I have no problem with DJs. But you cannot be elected simply because you know how to spin the disc. Andy Rajwell, they removed him via street riots a few weeks ago. In Liberia, they elected George Opongwea because he played good football. Surely, let him play good football, but on matters of governance, let's be a little serious. We can transform our countries by doing the right things. And I want to also to remind people, the Gen Zs are not the first young people in Kenya to go to the streets and to bring changes. It started before independence. You are only playing your role. Your luck is that you are playing your role during the era of social media. Therefore, you are more pronounced. Student participation is what has propelled countries to greater heights, to greater thinking. China never changed after the Tiananmen Square in 1980. That is how Deng Xiaoping came into power. And today, China changed with Chinese, or rather, democracy with a Chinese character. GDP, conservatively of China, 14 trillion. In 1968, it was the student riots in France, organized riots, not stone-throwing riots, organized protests that changed France. South Korea, 1980s, Park Chung-hee. Students, organized, no looting, no stealing, ideas, and the Park Chung-hee government changed. It is your duty to transform, and my good friend has already stated, it is your duty to say no. And truth is not democratic. It is not the number of people who are with you. When you are speaking the truth is the truth, whether you are in the minority. History will vindicate you in the fullness of time. That is what we urge. The question as to powerlessness, my good friend of power, Barrack Muluka, will powerfully deal with it.
Thank you. Your power is not necessarily in going to the streets. Your power is not necessarily in rioting. That when I live here and I've gone, then I hear that the students in Migori, in Rongo, were so inspired that they went into the streets straight away. That is not the power. That is kinetic power. Kinetic power is combustible. It burns out. Many have had rallies. Many have gone into the streets. Many have thrown stones, but they have not brought about change. Because what's going to bring about change is organized thought. What's going to bring about change is structure. What is going to bring about change is conversation. That when 2 or 3 are gathered in the name of that idea, and they lock their minds around it, and they say to one another, why do we accept to be hired as goons? And we're being hired as goons, as the good professor said, not necessarily in the streets, but as goons online. We have got to start migrating from those spaces and get into the spaces of ideas. The university, for example, is a place of ideas. The university, the Vice Chancellor will tell us, is a place where we come to search for the truth. It's a place where we come to search, to gather, to process, to disseminate, and to store knowledge. When we do that, we are making a contribution. So it's not necessarily that we are going to go into the street, that we are going to go into the villages to disrupt life there. The good Professor Wangari Maathai was forever talking about the hummingbird. When there's this big fire and the hummingbird comes with a small beak, she gathers some little water on the beak and drops it into the fire. She is making her contribution. If, as a 22-year-old, you talk to one person, you talk to 2 people, you are making a contribution. The numbers that are going to make change need not be gargantuan. As a Christian gentleman, I'm always reminded that Jesus Christ, being God, had only 12 people that he was talking to. And those 12 people made the change. One of them betrayed him. Another one denied him. But the small number was what made the change, so that today, 2,000 years and going, we still talk of the gospel of Jesus Christ. So it's not about assembling hundreds of people, thousands of people. The Sociology Students Association, what are they discussing? The Literature Students Association, what are they discovering there? And finally, in that vein, therefore, I wish to address myself direct to the students of communications. You have most certainly heard that your role is to entertain, is to educate, is to inform. I want to move that matrix a little bit. Your role is more than entertainment. Your role is more than informing and educating. Yes, it is all that. But fundamentally, your role is agenda setting. Setting the agenda for conversations for everybody in the country, for everybody in your environment. Which agendas are you setting? What topics are you positioning for conversation? Then you have got opinion and editorial. What opinion are you shaping? See, when you set agenda, you don't necessarily tell people that this is the way to go, that's the way to go. You place it there as a subject for consideration, for conversation. It was said here earlier on that Barrack asks questions, some of which he doesn't answer. Because I set the agenda, I put it there for other people to reflect upon, that these are the burning questions of the day. So we set agenda, we also express opinion and write editorials or do commentaries to shape opinion. When we do that, we are being helpful, we are contributing to the thought, not just following people blindly. I think it was somewhere in this neighborhood that a member of parliament stood on the floor of the house and said, we are cows. Sisi ni ng'ombe, we are cows. I think it was within this region where someone says, we are cows. Tukiambiwa we go like this, we go. When we are told left, we go left. When we are told go right, we go right. We cannot belong to the academy and be cows. We were not sent here, Professor, to be cows. We were sent here to sharpen, to hone the intellect, and to refuse to be hired, that people will come and say, let's go and hire the comrades. The comrades wanakuwa wazuri, ukiwapatia 500, hawaleti matata sana. Comrades wale wabaya sana, if you give them 1,000, you are all right. So that's space that we have got to reject. Finally, the continent finds it difficult to run away from the conclaves and the dockets in which it has left itself. Perhaps that is a conversation that we must accept to leave behind, that you cannot remove the borders, but you can find unity of purpose. That Africa goes to international forums to negotiate as individual states. Africa must take a multilateral approach to issues affecting her. Unfortunately, the DJs whom we elect into power, and now there are many in this parliament, you'll find somebody who was spinning discs, you will find somebody who was elected because he danced very well. I saw a young man called Bahati. I like the way he dances, but I don't think I want him to be my member of parliament. I saw a certain Gaucho who is also a member of parliament. He was elected because he can sing, and there are other clowns who are doing Obambla, something like that. They also got elected. Nairobi, an elite community population such as Langata. It doesn't get richer, wealthier than that. Being represented in parliament by a clown. What kind of people are we? Who has bewitched us? We must get out of those spaces, respect intellect. And Mzee was telling us here about Huisero, where they were telling me, Barrack, lete pesa, stupid. Then I looked at the fellow who was calling me stupid. And he was a fellow who had not even passed the Standard 3 exam, but he was calling me stupid. And when I went home and told my wife that one of those fellows there called me stupid, he told me, Barrack, lete pesa, stupid, utaanguka, stupid. And my wife told me, yeah, maybe you are stupid. So you are going there to compete against these people. So we have to rethink this whole architecture. Thank you.
Good. I want to request us to end this. Thank you. May I call Professor, our VC, with the name that we have had?
Yeah, Barrack, I don't want to be called stupid, so I will not be in any platform of politics. But my question, Professor Lumumba, you said that 75% of population in Africa are in the are young, they're youthful. And the other day, last week, I attended a meeting in which the complaint was that age 18 to age 24 have not taken voters' card. And therefore, the elder generation from 25 going all the way to 70 have got a bigger voting power than the youth. And the youth are not registering for voting. And therefore, the youth have not taken their position to be able to change the destiny of the country. And my question to you, as students of democracy and students of leadership, where are we going? What is the consequences if our youth are not taking votes so that they can change the trajectory of this country? Thank you.
Professor Otenga, you know, when the Kabaka has spoken, nobody will ask another question. So that is the last question. You know, Professor, first of all, I want to agree with you that in many African countries, because of disillusionment, many young people are saying, but why should I take the vote? I think it is last night that Barrack and I were remembering a play that was written by Francis Imbuga, Betrayal in the City. And one of the characters lamenting about our condition was saying, it was better while we waited. There is a sense of disillusionment. And that is why I've seen many appeals across the country asking younger people, you can change this if you have the vote. Some even want to be paid before they take the vote. And when they have taken the vote, they are prepared that it be bought from them again so that they don't vote. We find ourselves in this question. And it's a question which has a history. I was listening to a lament almost similar to yours in 1968 by Luther King Jr. He was asking and saying that the Negro will never participate in changing America as long as the Negro in Philadelphia has the vote but thinks he has nothing to vote for, and as long as the Negro in Tennessee cannot vote because he cannot be allowed to vote. A contradiction. And that is why, therefore, civic awareness becomes critical. There is the saying that he who does not vote votes anyway by not voting. Because you allow the minority who have the vote to now constitute a false majority. And that is what is happening. So the question, I would urge people that despite the failings of our system, let us give it a try. Let us take the vote and see if we can make sure that the vote counts. Let us try once again. I'm in a very guarded way saying that the other avenue can be very painful and very dangerous. So this avenue, I think Kenya has not reached that stage. Our constitution in many ways still gives us room for maneuver. We can still say and write the things that we say. There are countries where you cannot say and write the things that some of us say. So let us all not see doom and gloom there's still room for maneuver. Because the day when room for maneuver goes, then those of you who are students of history will remember these words of Otto von Bismarck, spoken in 1862 to the Prussian parliament. He told them, the issues of the day will not be settled by speeches, but by iron and blood. We have not reached that stage. So my message, Professor, the young people should go out there and take the vote and vote for change. One of the things that we'll have to remove is this thing called Bomas Kenya Tallying Center. That nonsense must disappear. We can protect the vote by ensuring that the vote signed at the polling station, that is where it is terminated and each one of us goes with it and we know what the results are. Because results are captured by both sides. That's why you find in certain places there is voting 103%. When we were students of math, we told that 100% only meant up to 100, but now there is 103, 110. So go out there and take the vote. Let us give it one final push. And let us not elect cows in human form. Thank you.
Great. I want to request us to make it to an end. But before that, I would request us to go to another session that I would request one of our management, Dr. Janet Chumba, to arise, and our Vice Chancellor to gift our two powerful academic speakers. Thank you. Great. I hope could we request, Madam, go ahead.
Okay, to our guests today, our Vice Chancellor, Management Board, the faculty, students, and colleagues, good afternoon. We want to appreciate our guests for the powerful presentations that they have given today. And I want to believe that each of us will be leaving this place more empowered, more knowledgeable, and more so with at least something that you can take home. In particular, I think I'm going home asking myself, what is my contribution between the time that I'm issued with a birth certificate and the time that I will be exiting with a death certificate? So at Rongo University, we appreciate guests and visitors. So in a small way, we prepared some humble gift, and we are humbly asking that you accept. Thank you.
May I request our guests to arise to receive our gifts as a gold mine of knowledge. Great. Thank you so much, our Vice Chancellor. He's been refreshed. He has seen his classmate. And great. I want to request one of us to say a vote of thanks. The Gunism. Now, as a student of sociology, have come up with the concept. Dr. Wagude, could you come and say a word of appreciation to the brains that has kept us busy for almost 4 hours? Thank you. Please.
All protocols observed. Our speakers today, Professor Lumumba and Dr. Muluka, the management, faculty members, the students, and the all listeners today. We want to say that everything that has a beginning has an end. And so we've come to the end of this very auspicious day. In a very special way, we want to thank the speakers because this was a learning moment. We've been able to learn, our attitude has been changed, and we're going home with new knowledge. In a setup like this one of the university, when knowledge comes home, we really appreciate. And in a very special way, we want to say thank you. And please come back again. You realize the students and even the listeners were not able to exhaust the questions that they wanted to put on board. So another one-time round would be of great excellence. We thank you so much. We appreciate you. Go well. God bless you. And come back again. It is well. Thank you.
Great. I want to request this with the permission of the Vice Chancellor. There was a team who organized this. Could you people arise and just wave like this? There's a team, a committee which was set. Please arise and just wave. Arise. Great. It was successful. Thank you. As we close, I request Dr. Florence to put us in the hands of God. And after this, I would request us to assemble in front here to take a memory photo. We will be having a photo out here. We have all our photographers, our own, they are professional from our school of Infocom. Thank you.
Thank you. As we observe all protocols, I want to request us to stand, even as we give a standing ovation to the Lord. And as we pray today, we can bow.